CL25 bar 1 open, and I welcome everyone here. Please note the meeting is being live streamed and the consequences of that. And also give a special welcome to our guests here, Leon over there and colleagues. So I'll start with the usual karakia. Whakatau, maiti wara, whakawātea, maiti hinanaro, whakarite, maiti tinana, kia ea, ai ngā mahi. Ai. We have apologies for lateness from Councillor Wickers and Councillor Ray. Can I have a movement second for those, please? Councillor Granger, Councillor Joyce, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. I'm not aware of any late items. Does anyone have a conflict of interest? No? Okay. There are no public excluded items and there's no public forum. So I'll move straight into the Community Board minutes for receipt. We start with the Waihi Beach Community Board meeting on the 2nd of December. Can I have a mover and seconder for those, please? Councillor Sol, Councillor Henry. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried.
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask?
The microphone, please, Councillor Mowbench.
23, 24, 27. Could we please have the minutes in English?
Right. They seem to be in English on those pages. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong bit. So page 23 of the agenda.
Sorry?
Page 23 of the agenda, do you say? They look to be in English to me. Unless you're looking at a different document. Okay, we can come back to that if you can find the right page. So moving on to council and committee minutes for confirmation. So we start with the minutes for the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee being held that was held on the 3rd of December. Can I have a mover and seconder for those, please? Councillor Granger, Councillor Henry. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Projects and Monitoring Committee held on the 3rd of December. Mover and seconder for those, please. Councillor Thwaites, Councillor Coxhead. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting held on the 5th of December. I'll move those. And Councillor Granger can second those. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Community Committee meeting held on the 10th of December. Councillor Mowbench, would you like to move those? And Councillor Daly. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the council meeting on the 12th of December. I'll move those. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And then lastly, from the minutes, we've got the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on the 17th of December. I'll move those. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we now move on to the reports proper, and we start with the annual report 2023-2024, and it was Sarah and Jonathan Fern to introduce these, please. Page 66.
Good morning, everyone. This morning I'm pleased to present the 2023-24 annual report to Council, seeking adoption of the report today. Audit have provided their audit opinion, and a copy of this is attached to the agenda. There are currently no outstanding audit matters, and I'd like to further welcome Leon and Anton from Audit New Zealand here today, who are also happy to answer questions as required from Council. We note the late adoption of the annual report, so Council is beyond the Local Waters Done Well legislation that permitted a 31 December adoption date. However, due to ensuring full compliance with accounting standards, we're seeking adoption today on the 18th of February. Details of the lateness of this is noted in the annual report in note 1.2. A table of amendments has also been provided to Council, summarising changes made to the annual report since it was last presented in Council agenda on the 12th of December. I would like to provide some financial highlights impacting the annual report from the 23-24 year. The economic environment during the 23-24 financial year made it a challenging period for council and for our community. Inflation and cost increases were seen across the business. However, we do note that the recent OCR decreases and hopefully further decreases in coming weeks, starting again tomorrow, will improve this moving forward for the business, albeit a slow recovery as anticipated. The government's signal of a 40% decrease in the building activity during the financial year was seen within our district, where council consent numbers were down between 20 and 25% across both planning and building activities. Actions were taken during this year to align costs to this reduction in activity, including a focus on reducing reliance on our external contractors for processing consents and utilising staff where possible. Our whole of council rates revenue was below budget, mostly due to an over-accrual in the 23 year of 1.4 million. This meant revenue was taken into that year that belonged to the 23-24 year. That, along with lower than planned penalties due to our late setting of rates, resulted in this below budget for our rates revenue. Council closed its financial year with a borrowing of 115 million, below budget of 141 million due to a capital program that was not fully delivered in 2024. These projects have now been moved into the 25 period, and council sits well positioned with the net debt to revenue ratio at 80%. I'd just like to highlight 3 of the key amendments to the annual report since the agenda on the 12th of December. The first one being recognition of a prior period correction relating to the council's shareholding in LGFA. Excuse me. The correction is to record LGFA's shareholding at fair values and not at initial cost as been previously recorded. Details of this transaction or these changes in our prior periods are noted on page 118 of the annual report and note 2.1. The funding impact statements on pages 103 to 116 have been updated to reflect a detailed reconciliation of reserve movements, including separating out targeted rates for future tracking. A support services activity funding impact statement is now also included in the annual report. The net deficit, as reported on the 12th of December of 1.7 million, has now shifted to a net deficit of 5.5 million. This change is mainly due to a reclassification of asset revaluation gains. These have been moved lower to the other comprehensive revenue and expense, and this is an accounting treatment change which had been previously applied differently. As noted in today's agenda, council have required to cash fund activities in its current accounts and reserves and in a rating shortfall from the regulatory activity. These cash funded activities total a rates funded deficit of 4.2 million for the year. Council is recommending this amount be loan funded for up to 3 years and to look to in-year savings in 24-25 to aim for an early repayment of this loan where possible. We are happy to receive questions on the annual report to staff or to Leon and Anton from an audit perspective.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I'll now open it up to questions for clarifications on the annual report. So I see that Councillor Joyce has a question. Thank you.
Just your reference to the loan to clear the deficit and that we're looking to repay that. Can we get some idea of how much progress has been made in that now that we're sort of halfway through that financial year?
So at December year to date, we're tracking towards our targets. So we had a series of initiatives for a higher level than the 4.2 million that we were looking to achieve, and we'll be looking to report fully on that to the ARF committee in the coming weeks.
I think I'd like to keep it to the annual report rather than tracking progress for this coming year, which is more properly addressed through the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee, but appreciate the question, Councillor Joyce. Any other questions? Councillor Murray-Benge.
I thought that it's so late, but at the same time, it is so detailed. It really is quite an informative thing for our communities. Do staff take into account the fact that in Kaimai, for example, the average income is 41,900, and in
Sorry, what's the relevance of this, Councillor Murray-Bench? This is a report on the last year's financials, not a question about affordability and questions like that.
Is this not our annual report?
This is our annual report. It's not to address future levels of affordability.
I just note, sir, that Kaimai, for example, people on average earn 41,900, and Te Puke, it's 39, and it's not a lot of money. And
Sorry, this is of no relevance to signing off the annual report. Could you, if you have a question, please address it to the presenters.
How much does staff take into account the affordability of people when in fact they're working through?
No, Councillor Murray-Bench, this is since we set the rates as a governance board, it's nothing to do with the staff. Well, they provide options for us, obviously, but we set the rates. We consider affordability amongst that decision.
That's true, sir. But at the same time, we have a deficit. And the deficit is one thing that the community will want to know why. And understanding it is really quite paramount for all of us. And I'm not satisfied that, in fact, the detail is such, but maybe I should leave that question for the auditor.
I think the reasons are laid out, but if Jonathan or Sarah would like to clarify, or even John would like to clarify the reasons for the deficit, I'd be happy to.
I think we've explained the reason for the deficit in the report, and Jonathan's just covered that. I think if we're talking about affordability in terms of being able to fund that deficit, as we've said, that hasn't had an impact on the rates, future rates, because we're finding those savings within the operational budgets for FY25 and out.
Thank you, John. And there are other questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. My question is perhaps, well, to the staff, but also perhaps to audit, and it's a bit of a crystal ball one, I guess, really. We came to a lot of the delays in this because of changes of what was required on how we were reporting as to certain valuations and bits and pieces like that. Are we able, best advice at this stage, because obviously we were starting to talk nashi with pairs as opposed to, it wasn't quite matching. Do we understand where we're likely to be? Are there likely to be further changes over this?
So Councillor Sol, this is sounding
period?
like a forward-looking approach. The annual report is fundamentally backward-looking.
Correct.
And sign that off. If we're considering future options, that's audit, risk and finance, really.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Joyce.
So there do seem to be some structural issues here. The water income is down and people are using less water. And as noted in an email exchange, overhead costs are up 11% compared to the relevant long-term plan. And I appreciate the annual plan forecast was different, but the long-term plan, so in the space of 3 years, we've had an 11% jump in overheads. We're having people using less water. So it's not, some of these issues that are material are not passing issues. So I guess, I'm not sure who I address it to, maybe the CEO, but what are we doing about the structural issues, for example, like people using less water, so we're charging less, like overheads rising.
Okay, so again, that's a forward-looking issue on how we're going to potentially restructure or cost save. It's a good point, but it's not for where it's signing off the annual report.
I appreciate the point, but this stuff has come out in the annual report and it didn't come out to us beforehand. So I think that is the issue there. I mean, the water, people using less water has not been talked about publicly. It's been talked about, around the table. And certainly not the 11% rise in overheads has not been talked about in public. So against the relevant long-term plan. So, I'm worried that people might see these as one-offs, but there actually are some structural issues in there. And I know we can't address them today, but we need to highlight them when they appear in an annual report.
I think it's best to note your comments, and I'm sure that the Morris Committee can pick those up when at the appropriate time. I know we've got Anton and Leon at the table, so perhaps it's time to invite them to present their audit opinion.
Thank you, Bishop. Tēnā koutou katoa, councillors. Yeah, so it's been a while, but we got through the audit and through the whole annual report process, and we completed our audit last week and provided you with our audit opinion or the audit report, which is in your agenda pack. It is quite long, so I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I hope you had a chance to maybe, when you're a bit bored, have a look at it. So that is the audit report. We're issuing an unqualified audit opinion, so meaning we agree that fundamentally, materially, with what is in your annual report on the pages as specified in the audit report. And we also don't have to draw any attention to any matters as we used to do in the past. And, you know, when we had the water reforms, we drew attention to that. Nothing like that at the moment. I think there are so many changes happening. If we have to draw attention to everything, our report will be even longer than it is at the moment. Well, that's that for this year. So, Your Worship, I think that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Leon. Appreciate your presentation. So next I've got Councillor Henry, Councillor Coxhead and Councillor Murray Benge.
I might be showing my ignorance in this, but I realise that this is the annual report, but is obviously going to have a huge impact on subsequent years on our rates. And we're looking at a percentage for each million that it is. Am I right on that? This deficit?
Oh, the deficit. Yes. Well, obviously any deficit will have an impact, or surplus for that matter, on the future. You just went through an LTP process where I think you considered the future in much more detail. So, yeah.
Yeah. Considering we haven't known about it for very long. That's
Fair enough.
Okay, Councillor Coxhead, please.
We copped a little bit of criticism for the lateness of our annual report and the audit sign off. But I noted that last week in Tauranga, they were only just presenting these as well for sign off. So are we amongst a larger group that are at this stage around this timing?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a number of councils that just couldn't get through the whole process before the end of December, which was the changed statutory deadline.
So it was as much as anything was your resource being available, wasn't it, as well?
Much less than in the past.
Okay. So we're not the last though, are we?
We'll have a debrief with management first, ma'am, then decide on the next audit.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murray Benge.
Really, Councillor Coxhead has basically asked my questions, but the changes that you had to go through have been significant. And so obviously, is it going to be easier for us this year as compared with last year with the auditing?
Touching wood, yes, ma'am. I really, Anton and I had a chat this morning about it, and you know, all the changes that happened. We said, well, there's a good template now for the next audit, or sorry, annual report process that we are just the auditors. But I believe it should go smoother next year.
And will it be easier for our staff as well?
Yeah, I think that's where it will start. If it's easier for your staff and we get the information that's of good quality and accurate, makes our lives easier as well. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray Benge. I don't see any more questions, but I've got a...
Yeah, I do. I just want to make a quick comment. I do appreciate the fact that the annual report is late, and I don't want to undermine that. It was due on the 31st of December, and this is the first council meeting since then.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I believe Councillor Thwaites would like to move the 7 recommendations. Is that correct?
Happy to move those recommendations soon, then I'll speak to it in a minute. Once you go seconder.
We have a seconder, Councillor Joyce. I'd just like to say it's been a long process, and I just want to thank the staff and the auditors for getting us over the line. Ultimately, it's I think the last few years for audit has been tough, and hopefully, following your words, Leon, that we can make things more smooth going forward. But I just want to thank everyone for that, and I'm supporting the recommendations to get this finally signed off. So thank you. Councillor Mike, Councillor.
Yep, I'm happy to speak now, and I'd certainly like to echo your sentiments to Leon and his team for the thoroughness of this year's audit. I know we're 7.5 months now into the new financial year, but well done. And your comments before about tidying up a whole number of little things seem to have come to fruition, reading the notes and reading further correspondence Jonathan sent to us for clarification. I would describe that year that we're looking at here as almost a perfect storm. If you take the pun away, sorry, about the impact of Gabrielle, we're certainly nowhere near as affected as Hastings and other councils, but for the accounting treatment of disposal of pensioner units, of a bridge impairment write-off, the tidying up of the whole Amakara special housing area, accounting treatment, it's all come on top. And Councillor Joyce touched on the fact that $1.5 million of water was actually recognised the year before when it should have been in the year we're looking at now. So that further compounded it. So it adds to that point about the perfect storm almost. I would draw if anyone, ratepayers are watching today, to look at page 100 of the report, being the statement of cash flows. They do tell a good story on the operational side of the business, and especially if you take $1.5 million out of the 23 figures and put them into the 24, it shows a very compelling, good story. And it's just all that accounting treatment has all come to pass to generate this deficit. So Jonathan and his team, baptism of fire walking into this. Jonathan, you've tidied up probably 3 or 4 years worth of work that got shelved, and you've had to unpack it off the shelf and incorporate it in. We don't like the fact that some ratepayers are out there at meetings and community boards talking about this big deficit, but it is explainable. There are all those factors. So I'd just like to hopefully move forward, and certainly with that timing of that big influx of money on the Amakara projects, there's going to be some good news and some black ink for this current financial year, but it doesn't mean it's any easier. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thwaites. Councillor Murray Benj.
I want to say that the audit, I said it before, that there was so much information in it, I felt it was superb compared to what I've seen in other years. So I don't want to take away from that. We are, as Councillor Thwaites said, facing the storm, but at the same time, we've got fast tracking of 29 and 2, which means there's an opportunity for serious development to occur within our region. One really thing that concerned me was the level of income that people earn within our district, and how important Rangiuru is to get some industrial bite within our area so that people can earn and prosper living here. But the thing that really concerned me was 39% feel as though.
Sorry, Councillor Murray Benj, this is straying far too far from annual report.
It's in the annual report, sir. So I'm just commenting on what is in the annual report. Am I not entitled to do so?
You appear to be giving a political speech about your view of the world.
Service performance results are 30%, and we have to improve, and that's our councillors have to improve our communication with our communities and bring it up to a significant level greater than that. So I thought that this challenges us, this annual report, and I thought it was very healthy and opportune time to look forward and know that the results from this year can influence and make us better in our performance as well. So the board staff have to do all the work, but at the same time, it's our job to make sure our policies are in place that actually encourage growth and that we can afford it.
Thank you, Councillor Murray Benj. I don't see any more speakers. Oh, sorry, Councillor Joyce, you have your hand up.
I'd like to thank the staff for the many huge amount of work they've done, but the many cleanup tasks that we've seen over the last year or so. From the small stuff, the Katikati Town Centre Development Fund, it's turned out to be spent in a few weird ways, through to the big structural stuff, and congratulate also the outgoing CEO, because you put that team in place from your and wherever it led, you just put them in place and let them go for it, and I appreciate that. It's really important that we have good, clear information. Obviously, it's still a work in progress. We found out about this deficit rather late in the piece, but we're on a good path to actually having a good idea of where our finances are. I am worried about a couple of structural things. People are using less water. We've banked on volumetric charges for a large part of our water's income. And while that may not be technically our problem much longer, that is a structural change that we need to think about. And to say overhead costs do seem to be rising more than. There's a lot more work to be done, but I agree with Margaret's point that we're getting a better flow of information, and that's the first step of getting better control of our finances. So thanks to John, Adele, and the team, and also the auditors for your part. I would like to talk to you about the Katikati Town Centre Development Fund at some stage, because that was a real mess. I don't know if you're aware of that one, but overall, it was a rough year. We've cleaned up a lot of messes. Building and construction is well down. So let's hope we can sort this out quickly, and look forward to the annual plan meeting at the end of the month, when we'll actually be able to explain to you what we're planning to do about it.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. So with that, I'm going to put the motion for those 7 recommendations, moved by Councillor Thwaite, seconded by Councillor Joyce. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So thank you very much, Leon, Anton. I appreciate your time here, and see you later in the year, probably.
Thank you, Worship. May I have a last word, please?
Please do.
It is my last audit on this council, and I'm really glad we go out on a good note, although it was a very long note. But we got there in the end, and I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed working with everyone at Western Bay. The good news is Anton was just promoted to Associate Director, and he will be taking over as your appointed auditor. So I leave you in better hands than you had before. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Leon, and look forward to seeing Anton later this year. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, 11.2, which is on page 296. So I welcome Peter Watson to introduce this one, which is the proposal to vest and classify land addition to Moore Park as recreation reserve and enter into a lease with Katikati Sport and Recreation Centre Incorporated. So that snappy title, please take it away.
Yeah, it's up there for the long titles. Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, so this relates to the request from the recreation group out there at Katikati, who have applied to have a lease to enable them to build their building on site. But prior to doing that, we need to look at the changing of or giving a classification to the land, because that land was originally fee simple, and it needs to have its classification on it under the Reserves Act. And that was now item identified in the 2018 Reserves Management Plan. So we're satisfying that action. And also, I guess the report's fairly self-explanatory. The concept plan that was adopted in 2018 also identifies this building being on site and the approximate location that the lease is going to be. And yeah, we've been working with Ben Warren and Co. They're progressing quite well. Their funding is progressing quite well as well. So this is a realistic outcome that we should be foreseeing in the not too distant future. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions? No. Okay. So we have 4 recommendations there, assuming councillor's minded to grant the lease. Do I have a mover and seconder for those 4 recommendations? Councillor Henry and Councillor Sol. Any speakers? Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Yes, this has been something that's been developing over some time. This or requirements to by people, and it's a bit of a muddle at times and so on. I feel this has now tidied a lot of this up and is bringing it forward, and something is happening. It's great to see it. I'm looking forward to seeing the sports actually really getting to happen and flourish from provision of these facilities, etc., that we're allowing to happen. So I support it very strongly.
Thank you, Councillor Sol. Before I go to Councillor Joyce, I think I'll just add myself that this was something, the Sport and Recreation Centre was something that came up when I was on the Katikati Community Board, and I supported then, and it's good to see it finally moving forward. I know the Community Board put a fairly significant chunk of money towards that, and I wish them well in their fundraising to complete it. I think they're doing a staged approach, just mindful of the tightness of money at the moment. So I'm supporting those recommendations. But we'll now move to Councillor Joyce.
I mean, I also think it's a good idea. There's been a bit of a fraught history here, we know, between the various codes. It was very pleasing to have all of them in the same room late last year, talking about how we can hopefully squeeze netball courts onto the park. There does seem to be a bit more cooperation. I think part of the answer was forgetting about one club competing with another club. Yeah, it's a big park. Having one facility was never going to work. So, the rugby club and the sports club down the far end will continue its way, and the cricket and its supporting clubs will continue at this end, and they are both complementary. We need both. And so I think that recognition has certainly helped. That spirit of competition between the codes seems to be easing, which is a good thing. And so I wish success to Ben and the team.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Councillor Henry.
Yeah, I too am really pleased to see this come to fruition. It's been sitting in the Katikati Community Board books with money that we supported to help them get off the ground with that. So it's going to be an asset for all the codes that are down that end, especially with the number of toilets that they will have access to. That will be really good. Yeah. So I wish them very well with their building plans, and look forward to seeing it being at the opening.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Murray-Bench.
It was sport that brought me into local government, and I think it's exciting to see that you've got so many volunteers with sporting codes who are prepared to put in the work to actually enable this to actually be achieved. And so many young people are going to benefit from this facilities on this park. And I just think it's such good news for Katikati and the wider community.
Thank you, Councillor Murray-Bench. So with Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I'd also like to give my congratulations to the process, but also recognise that the issues that have been forthcoming in Katikati, where possibly had similar concerns raised in Te Puke about additional community recreation facilities. And so now that Peter's got all this experience, then I'm sure at some stage Te Puke is going to have to go through a similar process to satisfy all the different groups that feel they're lacking a bit of a home. And I think the concept plan for the club room facility looks fantastic, and just signalling that Te Puke at some stage will be going through a similar process. But yeah, I do recall visiting Katikati and seeing that site that's been allocated. I think we purchased it. There was a whole lot of glass houses on it at the time, and I'm really surprised that it's taken so long to get to this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I would say that I'm sure Peter had the experience already, but just noting that. Okay, so there are 4 recommendations that have been moved by Councillor Henry, seconded by Councillor Sol. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And Peter's staying in the hot seat for the next item on page 310, which is the Midway Park Pukahina approval to renew lease, Pukahina Fishing Club Incorporated. So, Peter.
Thank you once again, Your Worship. So yeah, this is just I guess the statutory process we need to go through for the renewal, because it's beyond, it's 15 years, so it's beyond the 10-year term that we can normally just do in-house. coming back to council. But basically, the last lease was renewed in 2010, February 2010, and there was variation done in November 2018 to add on the deck area, so that's included in the renewal process. So basically, it's just allowing the club to carry on doing the activity and renewing for another 15 years through to 2040.
Great, thank you. I assume there's no questions, but do you have a question, Councillor Daly?
Oh, well, I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Is there a second? You seconding this, Deputy Mayor? So moved by Councillor Daly, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scrimger. Is there any debate on this, speakers? No, looks pretty straightforward. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And Peter stays for another one. Item 11.4 from page 314, which is the proposal to lease Ormokura Domain ex-Scouts building. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Worship. So effectively, this is a building that used to belong to the Sea Scouts, and the Sea Scouts folded, so the building being on council reserve land defaulted under the lease to council's ownership. So we obtained it as an asset. And we discovered at the time that it actually never had a code compliance certificate, so we had to do a bit of work to get that up to code before we could allow anyone else to come in there. And it took a bit of time to get to that point, but we've reached that point. So last year we put out a registration of interest for people, for groups to approach council with some ideas of how they could use the building and what they could use it for and what the community benefits would be. And so we had 3 assessments or registrations come through. I guess the standout one was that from the Pitirako Tribal Authority. They put together a very good case that showed a lot of use. They had a lot of support, written support from other community groups that would collaborate with them and use them. And from my perspective, a lot of the outcome this year, we will see the actual benefit occur in reserves with planting and pest control and what have you as well, versus some of the other uses that were proposed, which would see the building be pretty much a static use for 1 or 2 items there. And the rest was all explained in the report there, so happy for any questions.
Thank you, Peter. I'll see if there's any questions. I think Councillor Granger had a question, or you were seeking to move? Okay, before we do that, I just want to check if there are any questions. Councillor Mowbridge.
In reading the reports and looking at the pictures, the Scout building is really looking pretty awful. Are the men's shed going to be helping to upgrade it, or are they going to, or do we upgrade that so that it is a usable space for all people?
Sure, Chairman, yeah, how the men's shed are involved in supporting them, how they get involved with doing any kind of upgrades. The shed is pretty much a basic shed. It was there for storage of little yachts. So it's just literally frame with tin shed. There's no toilet in there, etc. To introduce a toilet and connect it would be about a $40,000 cost to do that. And so we've leased it as what you see is what you get, so to speak. Yeah, so whether the men's sheds want to help upgrade that building or not, or what the tenant would want us to do and work with us on that, we'll look at that on a case-by-case basis, I guess.
It's just so that it's a good space, and obviously Pitirako want to use it as much as possible. And I thought, is it possible to actually have the long-term parking associated with that building so that those that use the boat to get across to Matakana can park their cars there? Is that possible?
Right. Two things there. So one is at the community board meeting last week, it was agreed that the area outside the physical building, because there's a footprint for the building, the little parking area in the bollards, which actually did have a chain across it, so it was separated out from general public use. But that has been added into the lease area now, because the two go hand in hand, the hard stand area outside the sliding doors. With regards to island parking, we do have that policy where in the summertime we open up in the reserve for overflow car parking. And when there are large events, I work with Nessie Cooker and stuff about formalising a booking to enable them to have parking there if they have a big event over there and they want to do that park and ride or park and boat across to the island there. So there are arrangements in place to deal with that. parking requirement.
And further, Mr. Mayor, I thought the park's looking really, really good. And it's much to the credit of our staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Mowbray. Councillor Henry.
Right. My question stems from the lease arrangement with anybody who has a property with on council land. So when I was reading, I was surprised that the Omokoroa Boating Club didn't get chosen, but you've said that it was very convincing application from Perirākau. So we're finding across the district that once there is a lease given, it's very hard. Like we've got a lease in Katikati that has a Waihi person in it, a Waihi group in it, and it seems it's very hard to change that sense of ownership over the thing. And my question is Perirākau, when facilities in Te Puna come out, would they move if there was another interest if the boating club still had an interest in that building, when the facilities in the park in Te Puna are?
Councillor Henry, I think it's worth pointing out that Omokoroa sits within Perirākau's Kohi.
Okay.
So to give you an indication of the good spirit of Perirākau, they had a booking arrangement with us for the other Scout Hall in Maramatanga Park, where the Scouts had folded them. But then there was another group that came along with a greater need than theirs, so they relinquished their lease to enable someone else to have a place. I think. Yeah. And one of the things that came through quite strong, and I think is really supportive in our tangata whenua relationship, is Perirākau really want to have a presence they're very strong in Te Puna, but in Omokoroa itself, they want to have that presence, and that's growing, and this will help achieve and foster that relationship with us and other groups.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked the question because you clarified the thinking around it.
And just one more thing, most of our leases will have a clause in it to say that if the building is not being used for its agreed purpose or not being used at all, then we can make inquiries as we see fit and have that discussion with the LEC so it doesn't tie up a public asset forever and a day.
Thank you. Councillor Coxhead.
Well, I thought all the applicants and the applications were really, really well presented. And you've somewhat answered my question, but I must admit, in terms of cause, I was somewhat drawn to Ngā Hau Whānau Hoi and their cause. But I think what I'm hearing is it's probably more appropriate for a more local representative group to actually obtain the lease. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And the Waka group, my understanding, talking with Charles Burns from the Bay of Plenty or Bay Coast Rowing Club, they are affiliated because of the new pontoon down there. That place down in the Wairau Road with new pontoon has just gone off. So they are struggling with car parking capacity and everything at the moment. They've more than quadrupled use of that area, and I think this group is part of using down there.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Thank you, Councillor Coxhead. So look, we've had a mover from Councillor Granger, and I think Councillor Thwaites has signalled he wants a second. Is there any further debate on this one, Councillor Granger? Yes.
Thank you, Peter, for driving this through. And this has been an awful long time coming. That shed has sat there languishing for quite some time. But as Peter pointed out, it needed work done on what have you. But I think that the result we've arrived at is a very good one. I don't know how many people around the table know, but Council has a service delivery contract with OEMI and WCI, Waka Community Inc., to work on the environmental issues out there, and Perirākau are very much part of that contract in working with those two groups. And the pest-free organisation, OEMI, in Omokoroa, has been looking for space for some time to put their chemicals and equipment and what have you. And with both Perirākau and the Boat Club, they were offered space as part of this deal, which is good. So I think and Periraka are working very closely with the men's shed, Namakura as well, in terms of some work by the new cycleway over the bridge and other things. So I think it's just going to be a growing community cooperation and give a base for that, so that Periraka can be more involved in the reserves and the work that is happening in the community in Omakura. So I believe it's a really, really good outcome that we've arrived at. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Granger. So with no further speakers, I'll put the motion for those 3 recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So now moving on to page 373, which is my report to council. I'll take that as read, but if there are any further questions, please ask now. Councillor Coxhead.
I was interested in Unleash the Mayors. What was that about?
It's a rather dramatic term for a Zoom meeting where we discuss MTFJ.
FJ?
Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. Yeah, I think it does rather overpromise what's happening. But there we are. Councillor Mowbridge.
Give us some idea of your meeting with Andrew Corkle, NZTA.
Yes, of course. So that meeting was it was partly a relationship meeting, and that's I think that the first I'd met him on a few occasions, but that's the first time we had a formal meeting since he replaced David Spears as the relationship stakeholder manager for our area. And as you might imagine, one of the key topics that I raised was the median barrier between Matahui Road and Moreton Road, and in particular the continued barrier in front of Wright Road. So I expressed that I thought that barrier should be removed from in front of Wright Road, and various other topics as well. But that was a key point of that meeting.
Is he investigating that Wright Road?
He has, he's talking to senior people in NZTA and the board, so that has been mentioned. Where that ends up, I don't know.
We'll keep him on the job.
Yes, yeah, I'm very happy to support the Wright Road residents to get their right-hand turns, the access back again. The other point that I probably worth making public is that I think we've got to be careful not to throw the baby out of the bathwater, and actually there's a good opportunity to put a barrier in the Arbiter curves where there are no driveways or roads joining, and which is a very dangerous section of road that could probably benefit from a barrier. So that's the other side. It's not just about removing safety mechanisms. Actually, let's add them in sensible places too.
Have we had any comment from Seeker? They have to only make a left-hand turn in order to go right. They've got to go down to Moreton Road as well. Have they made any comment to you as well?
They've not contacted me directly, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of me? No? Okay, in which case I'm happy to move my report and seek a seconder for that. Councillor Henry. I'm assuming there's no further debate. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So the last item on the open part of the agenda is about our membership of the Tauranga Western Bay of Plenty Transport Joint Committee. Actually, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour and I actually attended that on Friday, but alas, we were not full members at that point, so couldn't vote, but we did certainly contribute. But I'll take the report as read, and Robin can answer questions as well. But are there any questions there? Councillor Joyce.
So we already have a regional transport committee, and I realise it's a lot broader. But what does this committee do that's different to the regional transport committee? And in particular, considering that the two main people at the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, the chairman of the regional transport committee and the deputy chair, are not on this group. So So it seems like you've got two separate committees with two separate memberships from regional council. I mean, the mayors are more aligned, but the regional council seems all over the place.
Yeah, so
What does it do?
for the regional council, it makes more sense that Chair Leader's not on it because he doesn't live in the Tauranga area. So that makes sense that he doesn't have to come in to discuss Tauranga issues, specific issues. It's look, without trying to just read out the role and delegations of the committee. It is more to bring those strategic issues together that involve roading and public transport together for the Western Bay sub-region, so we can discuss them all together. As you rightly point out, the Regional Transport Committee and the Public Transport Committee cover the whole region. So sometimes, that we'll be having discussions about bus routes in Rotorua, and it's perhaps of less relevance. So this was a desire from particularly Tauranga City Council and Regional Council to have that more focused strategic group, and they were keen to invite us to participate as well. But the full blurb is in their roles and delegations. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour.
If I could just endorse what the mayor said, as it was because I went in pretty blind, just being told I should go to this meeting the other day. I didn't know anything really, but the chairman was quite clear that they wanted this committee to focus on strategic issues rather than operational issues. So.
What's the difference?
Operational, in my view, is the day-to-day and week-to-week operations that are happening on the ground. Strategics, looking ahead at what can be done to make the systems perform better.
Yeah, Cedric, you wanted to comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think a big one from the discussions I've been a part of for this committee is we've got the TSP, Transport System Plan, which has Western Bay, TCC and Regional, NZTA at the table in priority one, and it's looking at all the different projects or TCC's top 5, connection to Mokoroa, TNL2, it's all the big strategic projects, and there wasn't effectively what they thought was a governance or a type of elected member representation that we could go to effectively get feedback or seek direction before it went off to one of the regional committees where the decisions are made. So effectively, this is more to help support the TSP in terms of their thinking, strategic thinking to enable better outcomes.
Thank you, Cedric. I've got a question from Councillor Henry.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the membership. There doesn't seem to be any from our role here.
Yeah, so that's one of the resolutions here is to appoint me as the member and Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour as the alternate.
Yeah, I mean from BOP, from the Regional Council, their membership. But my question was also about how it informs. So I guess there's minutes that and everything that go to.
It's a public meeting. It's on live stream.
Yeah, and then it feeds into the council meeting itself.
Yeah, so
just the same process.
The minutes come through, but it's a joint committee rather than a pure council committee. Yeah, Councillor Daly.
Yeah, James, I'm just wondering why we've only decided to appoint the mayor and the deputy, whereas the other two councils have got 2 primary appointees and 1 alternate. Why did we not have that option, or is it something that you've unilaterally decided to not appoint a further councillor?
So that was debated, and the view of the committee, existing committee, was that we should have one member.
And can you provide the reasons for that decision?
Because a lot of the decisions are Tauranga focused, as you might imagine. So they felt that that was the appropriate level of representation.
Yeah,
but we're not in a position to demand this.
No.
It was put forward that we perhaps should have equal representation, but that's not what the committee decided.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm just voiced my disappointment with that.
Yep. Okay. Hang on, no, I had councillor Murray Bench next, and then councillor Cox.
As I looked at the membership, and I tend to agree with councillor Daly, the issues are between Tauranga and Western Bay. The regional council is out there floating around, looking after the buses and.
So this is previously this is the Tauranga Public Transport Committee. So there's a strong whakapapa of public transport in this committee. That's why it is absolutely crucial for regional council. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just thought I'd make that clear that public transport is a key theme of this.
Yes.
Right. So the reality is they'll be of no help to us if it comes to improving safety on our roads or anything, or will they? And how do we as councillors have an influence into that committee? Can you please explain how it's going to work?
Well, obviously, if you would like me to represent a view or desire, speak to me or Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, and can move things forward. I'm council's. Seeing the motion goes through, I'm council's representative on this committee, and if you want things raised, then you please raise them.
Right, sir, I would have loved to have seen us had a greater representation, and because it is the on ground between Tauranga and Western Bay, and they need us as much as we need them. And so this was one place where we could have had a combined thing where numbers didn't matter. So, but however, may I say that please can we have detailed minutes from this committee so that we understand and can all keep up with where it's actually going? If you could ensure that, we would feel a lot more confident.
Thank you, Councillor Murray Bench. As I did say, there it is a formal committee. There are formal minutes, and they are made public. So and a live stream. So you can keep up absolutely with that. No trouble at all.
Haven't got time to watch the live stream, but certainly got time to read the minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cox.
Oh, so my question was the same as councillor Daly's actually, and I can't believe that we don't have a third, given that most of the traffic issues are in our district. So I'd strongly suggest we have a third. I can't see why we wouldn't.
Thank you, noted. Councillor Joyce.
Just wondering if you give us an idea of what topics are currently being discussed. I mean, an obvious one to me, but I may be completely off beam, might be congestion charging, which crosses the border between Tauranga City and Western Bay. So what are the current topics that the committee is looking at, please?
There are a number of topics discussed on Friday. Councillor Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, would you like to?
I don't know whether I would say specifically congestion charging so much was one of them, but one of the key themes of the meeting was to talk about congestion generally, and what projects did the committee want to look at that could alleviate issues across the district. And it's quite a bit wider than that, I think, but that's the general theme.
So does that mean that the committee will endorse the fast track legislation for 2 and for 29? I hope so.
It's probably, well, I'm not going to go into specifics like that. I'm going to read out just a few of the things that the joint public updates that were in the agenda on Friday, and they included Tauranga City Centre bus stops, the 15th Avenue Turret Welcome Bay business case, Cameron Road Stage 2, Arataki public transport facility, Tatuma urban growth and Wairaki public transport, Keenan Road urban growth area and public transport, Papamoa East interchange, Tauranga transport model, smart trip variable road pricing, which speaks to what Councillor Joyce was saying, speed management plan, that was for Tauranga, LCLR projects, an update from us, NZTA updates, Takitimu North Link Stage 1 and 2, State Highway revocation, Toriko urban growth, Toriko West network connections, and RONs. So that gives a broad view of what the sort of things were discussed.
So can you circulate that for us?
It's on Stella. It's been circulated already. Okay, councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. No, I find myself siding a bit with the other comments about how we perhaps may be in a sense underrepresented in this situation. I also look at it, the situation of we had I guess a kite flowing about a year and a bit ago, maybe via the commissioners and I guess by TCC staff about controlling or altering and charging for use of roads and the heavy traffic situations through here. That just sort of comes through, and really we just get blindsided by some of these things totally. Okay, so I would think that's probably still quite buried in the agenda. But also when you say it's to do with transport, I get back to this. We have transport problems. We need transport. Our area people, be they at Te Puke, be they further south of there, be they in Karikari or Waihi Beach, we need stronger representation for public transport as well. We can't expect the services they get here. And I know that's big, and it's a way of taking those congestion points away maybe. But we should be represented far better than that. And I don't mean that in the quality. I think it is the numbers and getting reports back a lot more, taking a more active role, not being blocked out. It's almost like, hey guys, we'll give you a token. Yeah, you can turn up. It's not saying you can't vote. It's not saying you can't speak, but it is saying you haven't got any power.
Yeah. No, I would say my experience of these things is I wouldn't focus too much on number of votes. These things don't normally go to the votes. It's more along of updates and receiving reports and so on. It's rare that we have a vote, a serious vote, and even less rare that it's contested in any significant way. So, but I hear your point, and look, I can raise it with the chair. Okay, Councillor Daly.
Yeah, well, I take your last point, Mayor Denyer, but it's not necessarily about the votes, it's about the issues raised. And so if it's to remain at the 2 members stated, then it's incumbent on you two to raise the issues that we are concerned about.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Granger, did you want to speak? Sorry, I missed you.
Well, yes, and I share the concerns around the table about the representation, and that list that you just read out of topics rather confirms that we're just being treated like the poor relations. I mean, there's really nothing on that list that helps our area. So is it a tokenism, as Councillor Sol has said, or what? I mean, you know, our bus services are wretched, and our roads still need issues dealt with. Okay, they've got issues in Tauranga as well, but I don't know, it seems like a bit of a raw deal at the moment to me.
Thank you. Cedric.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So part of the conversations that we had at staff level that Callum and I had after they started putting the group together was we did have a discussion about having equal representation. So Callum and I did push heavily for 3 to go on there, and then we did leave that conversation with if it came back and it was the desire for council to push for more, then we would take that back through the staff channel and potentially look at that. Some of the rationale behind thinking about why it is the way it is that of the TSP group that sort of forms part of this, that seeks direction from this committee, we're about 5% of the total projects, if that makes sense. I appreciate that I'm using the number there, but so the big share of the pie in terms of the projects is TCC and regional council. So I think that was their rationale why they put forward only 1 representative, which is also reflective of how much we contribute in terms of funding to TSP, eventually the committee. But I can take that as a action with further discussion with Mayor James. If we do want to push that, we can go back and have that discussion about more representation. That wasn't a no from them that you can't have it. It was just more the fact that this committee was there to give some direction to TSP, but ultimately didn't actually have any power, or still sat with the regional committees, decision-making committees, which Mayor James and Deputy Mayor Scrum are sitting on. So just some context to it, but we can go back if that is a desire.
Councillor Joyce.
So you had revocation of State Highway 2 amongst the topics, right? So not for today, but it'll be good to get an update at some stage to the council on that, because that does obviously affect us. Thankfully, they've recently done some work on it, so it's not going to be quite, hopefully, the wretched state it wasn't when they give it back.
Yes, I think, and that was at least as much to do with revocation in the Tauranga area as well, so, through Bethlehem. So yeah, that covers both councils. There's probably a good example of where it's useful. It is primarily a Tauranga centred committee, but there are implications that go wider than that, and it's good that we're in the room. And to talk about what Cedric was saying about we can push for an extra member, but there are these same with buses. Most of the buses are in Tauranga, but it's useful to have that connection or involvement so that we're not left out, as you said. Councillor Murray Benjamin and Councillor Ray.
I think, Sue, when I look at the numbers, it's quite clearly it's all Tauranga focused, and it may be that they are paying the way, but everything that they do impacts on the roading network within our Western Bay. It doesn't matter whether you're rural or urban Western Bay, there's an impact. And so I think it's really important that we do push for equal representation on this committee. And if a Tauranga city wants to play the big person, the bully, and even the regional councillors,
let's not describe them as being bullies. Councillor Murray,
focused.
let's not describe them as bullies. That's not appropriate. They've not bullied in this sense.
Well, you know what I mean. They have the power of the numbers, sir, and that gives huge advantage to whatever they want to do. And I think for you and for our deputy, it's really important that you have an equal status on that committee.
Thank you. Appreciate the view, which has been expressed by a number of you. Councillor Ray.
Whilst I agree that with fair and effective representation, I just wanted to note, sir, that is it not sort of Western Bay's responsibility to sort out some of our own traffic problems? Like, I would have thought that we don't necessarily need a joint committee in order to do that, please.
Yeah, I think you're right. I might go to Cedric in a moment, but you're right in that this committee doesn't have, it hasn't got a pot of money to spend.
Exactly.
It all comes back to our councils and NZTA to spend the money and fix the problems. This is more about strategic collaboration to make sure it happens in a more joined up way. But is there anything you want to add to that, Cedric?
Through Chair, no, I agree. I think that the purpose of this is that sort of the vehicles don't necessarily see the boundaries. So ideally the congestion comes from into Tauranga, but then they've got to come through our network. So it's looking at, we've got all these projects that need to be undertaken, TNL2, all these other ones that will improve congestion right through TCC and into Western Bay. So the idea is that how do you coordinate these works? How do you rally external funding? How do we get NZTA engaged? How do we look at other sources of funding? So it's all about how you look at the Western Bay as a system in terms of a total network and how you can move traffic and improve productivity. Because part of that obviously includes the Port of Tauranga. It's got all these different waves in it. The idea that we do it together gives benefits that we, in terms of how we plan those projects. So basically we don't have multiple areas opened up with traffic management all in one go, although it feels like that, and that we basically do a project, say, over in the west, and then you shift to the east. So it's basically trying to manage that. Otherwise, you'd have, from a delays perspective, you'd be looking at hours at each end.
Thanks, Cedric. I was just trying to understand like the sort of big deal, I guess, about a joint committee that just only has recommendation powers. So I just thought I'll mention that.
Councillor Ray. Councillor Henry, I'm looking to move on, but Councillor Henry.
Quick one. I hear what you're saying, Cedric, and yes, it is quite good, would be quite good to have a voice at the table for things that we're doing and informing them and difficulties that we're facing and challenges that we want them to consider. But do you, as an operational person, do you work closely with their Tauranga City's operational team?
Through so yes, so as part of TSP, which effectively will report up into that group along with the other groups, we're working on things like joint camera approach in terms of Bluetooth. So basically looking at where our high congestion areas are, we're looking at time to project, traffic management. So it's across the board to work out how you can improve the productivity. I.e., if we are going to put a team close a road, or we're going to put traffic management up, we talk to TCC first to sort of understand, well, what are you doing up there? So it's basically a lot of it's about journey management, but we also have conversations about procurement management, resourcing, because one of the big things is how you resource these massive projects. Tauranga City, for an example, we've got NCTA project managing some of their big projects because they didn't have that in-house. So it's really looking at how you can optimize the efficiency of resourcing and just have better management. But a lot of it is also to trying to understand how we build business cases to NZTA.
Great, thank you. So I think we better let's move on. So there's 3 recommendations there. I'm happy to move that. Can we have a seconder, please? Councillor Murray Benge. I assume we've covered the debate fairly well. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So what we're going to do now, we're coming to the confidential section. So we're going to move and second to exclude the public, noting there is the exception of Nigel Tutt from priority 1 for item 13.4 and also Greg Timms for item 13.5. So they will remain for those items. So can I have a move and second for those? Councillor Granger, Councillor Henry. All those in favour, please say aye.